Nicholas Alexandrovich Romanov, later Tsar Nicholas II, was born in 1868, a time of great change and turmoil in Russia. He was the eldest son of Tsar Alexander III and Empress Maria Feodorovna, growing up in a family that was both powerful and deeply traditional. Nicholas grew up surrounded by the splendor and formality of the Russian court, a world filled with opulence, strict protocols, and a sense of divine right. His education was rigorous, steeped in military tradition and Orthodox faith, designed to prepare him for the immense responsibilities of leadership. Tutors instilled in the young Nicholas a deep sense of duty to Russia and the autocratic power he was destined to inherit, emphasizing loyalty, discipline, and the importance of maintaining the status quo. He learned Russian history, languages, and military strategy, subjects that were considered essential for a future Tsar. Nicholas, however, was a shy and sensitive boy, often feeling overwhelmed by the expectations placed upon him. He seemed ill-suited to the burdens of absolute rule, struggling with the weight of his future role. Despite his reserved nature, Nicholas showed a keen interest in military affairs, finding solace and purpose in the structured environment of the army. He participated in military exercises and enjoyed the company of soldiers, who provided a sense of camaraderie and belonging that he often lacked elsewhere. This early fascination with the army would later influence his decisions as Tsar, particularly in matters of war and peace, shaping his approach to leadership and governance. The death of his grandfather Alexander II in a terrorist bombing had a profound impact on Nicholas, leaving an indelible mark on his psyche. It reinforced the dangers faced by the Romanovs and the constant threat of revolution, a reality that loomed large over his formative years. This event cast a long shadow over his childhood and instilled in him a deep fear of instability and change, shaping his conservative outlook and resistance to reform throughout his reign. In 1894, Alexander III died unexpectedly, leaving 26-year-old Nicholas as Tsar. His coronation took place in Moscow amidst great celebration. However, a terrible tragedy struck during the festivities. On the Kadinka field, a vast open space, a huge crowd gathered for a public celebration. Rumors spread of free food and souvenirs. Panic erupted as the crowd surged forward, trampling thousands. Over 1,000 people died in the Kadinka disaster. The event shocked Russia. Many saw it as a dark omen for Nicholas II's reign. The Tsar, deeply affected by the tragedy, nevertheless continued with the coronation festivities. This decision, made on the advice of his advisors, was seen by some as insensitive and uncaring. It contributed to the growing perception of Nicholas as out of touch with the suffering of his people. The Kadinka tragedy highlighted the challenges facing Nicholas II. It exposed the deep social and economic problems brewing beneath the surface of Russian society. It also served as a stark reminder of the fragility of his position and the ever-present potential for chaos and unrest. Nicholas II believed in his divine right to rule as an absolute monarch. He saw himself as the chosen one, ordained by God to lead Russia with an iron fist. He rejected any calls for constitutional reform or limitations on his power. To him, any form of shared governance was a direct threat to his divine mandate. "I shall maintain the principle of autocracy," he declared, "just as firmly and unswervingly as did my unforgettable father." His father's legacy was a guiding star, a beacon of unyielding authority. The Tsar's commitment to autocracy put him at odds with the growing desire for change within Russia. The streets echoed with the voices of those yearning for a new era. Industrialization was transforming society, creating a new working class and a growing middle class. These groups were becoming increasingly vocal about their needs and aspirations. Both groups demanded greater political and economic rights. They sought representation, fair wages, and better working conditions. Nicholas, influenced by his conservative advisors, viewed these demands with suspicion. He saw them as seeds of rebellion, threats to his unchallenged rule. He saw them as threats to the stability of Russia. To him, maintaining order meant suppressing any form of dissent. He believed that any concessions to reform would only weaken his authority and lead to further unrest. In his eyes, compromise was a slippery slope to chaos. While resistant to political change, Nicholas did oversee some economic progress. he recognized the importance of a strong economy for maintaining his power. His finance minister, Sergei Witte, implemented policies that encouraged industrial growth. Witte's vision was one of modernization and economic strength. Russia's railway network expanded and factories sprang up in cities. The nation was on a path to becoming an industrial powerhouse. However, these economic advances were often accompanied by harsh working conditions and low wages for the burgeoning industrial proletariat. The workers toiled long hours in dangerous environments. Social unrest continued to simmer, fueled by economic inequality and political oppression. The seeds of revolution were being sown as the people's cries for justice grew louder and more desperate. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 proved to be a turning point in Nicholas II's reign. Russia's defeat by Japan, a newly industrialized Asian power, was a national humiliation. It exposed the weaknesses of the Tsarist regime and further fueled the flames of discontent. On January 22, 1905, a peaceful demonstration of workers marched on the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. They carried a petition to the Tsar, asking for better working conditions and political reforms. The Tsar's troops, fearing an uprising, opened fire on the unarmed crowd. Hundreds were killed or wounded in what became known as Bloody Sunday. The massacre sparked outrage across Russia. Strikes crippled the country. Faced with widespread unrest, Nicholas II issued the October Manifesto. It promised civil liberties and the creation of a legislative assembly, the Duma. While these concessions appeased some, the Tsar's commitment to meaningful reform remained questionable. Now, let's delve into the era of Nicholas II and the tumultuous path leading to war. This period was marked by significant political, social, and economic upheavals that would eventually lead to one of the most devastating conflicts in human history. Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, faced immense challenges during his reign. His rule was characterized by a series of crises that tested his leadership and the resilience of the Russian Empire. His decisions and actions, influenced by both personal convictions and external pressures, played a significant role in shaping the course of history. From domestic policies to foreign diplomacy, every move he made had far-reaching consequences. As Europe edged closer to conflict, Nicholas found himself navigating a complex web of alliances and rivalries. The intricate balance of power in Europe meant that any misstep could lead to widespread turmoil. The pressures from various fronts, both domestic and international, mounted steadily. Social unrest, economic difficulties, and political opposition within Russia added to the external threats from other European powers. Despite his efforts to maintain stability, the forces at play were too powerful to contain. The military build-up and the fervor of nationalism across Europe were pushing the continent towards an inevitable conflict. The outbreak of World War I marked a turning point, not just for Russia, but for the entire world. The war brought unprecedented destruction and changed the geopolitical landscape forever. Nicholas II's leadership during this period was under intense scrutiny. His ability to lead the nation through such a turbulent time was constantly questioned by both his allies and adversaries, and the consequences of his choices reverberated far beyond the borders of his empire. The decisions made during his reign had lasting impacts on the global stage, influencing the course of history for decades to come. In the end, the road to war was paved with a series of pivotal moments and decisions, each contributing to the inevitable clash that would reshape the global landscape. The alliances, treaties, and conflicts of interest all played a part in the lead-up to the war, each contributing to the inevitable clash that would reshape the global landscape. The mobilization of armies and the diplomatic maneuvers were all part of the complex prelude to the Great War. As we reflect on this critical juncture, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities that define Nicholas II's reign. His personal writings and speeches offer insight into his thoughts and the immense pressures he faced, and the profound impact it had on the world stage. The legacy of Nicholas II and the events leading up to World War I continue to be studied and debated, highlighting the enduring significance of this period in history. Russia's involvement in World War I was marked by immense hardship and suffering. The country faced severe military defeats, widespread famine, and economic collapse. The Russian army, ill-equipped and poorly led, suffered catastrophic losses on the Eastern Front. This turmoil at the front lines was mirrored by growing unrest at home, as the Russian people grew increasingly disillusioned with the war and the ruling monarchy. In the face of mounting pressure and widespread protests, Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate the throne in March 1917. His decision marked the end of over 300 years of Romanov rule. Following his abdication, Nicholas and his family were placed under house arrest. They were moved from one location to another, as the new provisional government struggled to maintain control amidst the chaos of revolution. Eventually, the former Tsar and his family were exiled to Siberia. Their final destination was the remote town of Ekaterinburg. Here they lived under increasingly harsh conditions, isolated from the outside world. In July 1918, the family's fate was sealed. In the early hours of July 17th, they were executed by Bolshevik forces, marking a grim end to the Romanov dynasty. The legacy of Nicholas II is a complex and debated one. Some view him as a tragic figure, a ruler ill-prepared for the immense challenges of his time. Others criticize his inability to adapt to the changing political landscape, which ultimately led to the downfall of the Russian monarchy. Regardless of perspective, the story of Nicholas II and his family remains a poignant chapter in the history of Russia, reflecting the profound transformations that shaped the 20th century.